Firstly I'd like to thank VJ for inviting me here. Thank you, VJ, and it's wonderful to see everybody. Wonderful quote there at the end of that last speech, a small group of people can change the world. That's clearly absolutely true, and so I'm just going to tell a little bit of a story. Most of you know that the 21st of September is, of course, the International Day of Peace. That was originally set up by Dr. Oscar Arias, Costa Rica, in 1981. And when I was thinking about making a film about peace in 1998, I didn't think there was a Day of Peace. And the reason why I didn't think there was a Day of Peace is that the world's Day of Peace didn't have a fixed calendar date. So it's quite difficult to know when it was for that reason. And it also didn't ask anybody to stop fighting. It didn't ask for a ceasefire. It didn't ask for non-violence. So those are two fundamentally important things. If we're going to have a day, we should know when it is. And if we are going to have that day, it should ask us to stop, because it's a day of peace. So we then went on a journey, as many of you know, with the support of the United Nations and the British government and many NGOs and wonderful figures, to see if we could change that situation. And obviously we all know how the story ended after sort of years of travelling. I'm pleased the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted that the 21st of September would be a day of ceasefire and a day of non-violence. And that was a wonderful moment, I think, for everyone. And obviously hundreds of people have made that a reality. The small group, the wonderful quote at the end of that last speech is exactly true, isn't it? We all know that in terms of the different organisations that we support or we run. We know that we can make a huge impact, if we concentrate and, are patient and work hard. It was interesting to try to prove that the day could work. I mean, I think that, can we unite for peace? Clearly, the answer is yes. And I think that the Afghanistan story and then making that film about, going into Afghanistan and seeing if we could, get a ceasefire to happen. And that took a few years, of work, and obviously UNAMA and UNICEF and WHO and Karzai and NATO and ISAF. And the Taliban, of course, all acknowledged that the day and said, okay, we won't kill or we won't kidnap on that day of peace in Afghanistan. And as a consequence of that, 10,000 vaccinators were mobilised by incredibly courageous and wonderful people. And 1.4 million children were given the polio vaccination on the 21st of September. So that clearly proved that, the world's Day of Peace, that if we unite and we come together, then we can make peace happen. And that was an extraordinary, something to witness. And we put that film out. That film went to about 100 countries and told a lot of people that the 21st of September was a day of peace, and that actually it could work in the most complex place of the world. And that story, I think, was hopeful. It was, I think people found it inspiring that a group of people had come together and they'd done something. And then what we had been doing over the last, since Afghanistan, it continued obviously to work in Afghanistan for a few years, and then we concentrated on a bigger picture, which was, can we get the world to unite? We all know about the 21st of September because we're all in the peace business and we care about it and we're passionate about it, and we therefore know about the day and we do things, whether it's Peace Jam or whoever it might be, everybody, CND, etc., everyone acknowledges the day. But what I was really interested in was institutionalising that day, is making sure that everybody knew about that day. And that's a very kind of technical process, actually. And that requires, to work in sort of all sectors of society. And so we then embarked on a journey through film and through music and through building coalitions of faith and NGOs and corporations, and working very hard within, sort of social media and creating education materials that would be in a number of different languages, of course the official languages of the United Nations, and trying to get them out into the world. So we sort of carried out a very strategic process with as much funding as we could possibly get to try to institutionalize the day. And I think that, why I love this phrase that VJ has come up with and asked us all to talk about is because I absolutely believe, as we all do, that we can unite for peace. And I think that on the 21st of September, we've been seeing the day grow, not so much now, but 2 years ago, we were seeing the day grow at about 32% per annum increase of people. That's massive growth. There aren't businesses that grow at that sort of pace. And McKinsey and Company were doing the measurement for us. So we suddenly got really into measuring, what was really going on that day of peace. How many people were being exposed to it? How many people were fully aware of it? And how many people were changing their behaviour, i.e. being more peaceful? Because if we can do that, if we can measure peace, and if we can, present it in a concrete it's real, there's a picture of what peace looks like, then it's much more likely that others will want to join in. It's a little bit like me saying, I'm going to climb the mountain, I've climbed the mountain, and the view is beautiful, and you just have to believe me. Or I say, I climbed the mountain, and I took a picture of the view. Have a look at this. And you go, wow, I want to climb that mountain. And that's what we realised that we had to do in order to get the world to unite for peace. Then we needed to see the benefits of it. We needed to see the view. We needed to realise that picture. And so we went on that process. The corporate sector was instrumental for us. I mean, a lot of how do we get to a lot of people? I mean, everything works together, but the corporate sector was the way in which we were able to hit extremely large numbers, and in fact able to put the fuel in the tank. It's like a Formula One car, isn't it? If you look at Formula One cars, they've got lots of logos on the side of them. That's the only reason that the car races around the track. And I wanted to make sure that we could get to a lot of people. I wasn't prepared to just tell a few people. That's no good. We got to tell a lot of people about peace. A lot of people. So we have to work in all different sectors. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, that was one sector, the business sector, that we had to engage. And some people don't like it, but I didn't know any other way of doing it. We had to work with the business community. And in fact, working with the business community, the way in which we went about it was to make sure that we weren't controlled by anybody. That nobody could say the way we had to say things. If you want to put fuel in the tank, that's great. We'll drive the car. But if you're going to tell us how to drive it, then we can't take your fuel. And that's the way we operated. And that's become very, very interesting, over the last few years. So the sort of Burger King McDonald's campaign, which you may or may not have heard of, it reached around 15 billion impressions, that campaign. 15 billion impressions. I mean, it's an astonishing number. It was the single most successful campaign that company had ever won. It told 40% of America about the 21st of September. The commercial opened the Super Bowl. I mean, it was like astonishing. Actually, sorry, it was the Make Love Not War campaign that we did with Unilever that opened the Super Bowl. Another great example of the corporate sector really moving the needle. So that's the way in which we've been doing things. So the exposure is how many people, the measurement, just to talk briefly about the measurement side of things, exposure is how many people are exposed to the message. It's a little bit like, the article is in the newspaper, so therefore you can measure that the article was in the newspaper, it was exposed. But how many people actually read the article within that paper? So that's a different number, and that's awareness. And then how many people from reading the article actually went and did something that the article was talking about, and that's behavioural change. So now that's a kind of classic marketing model that any large corporation will operate under. How many people can we expose to our message? How many people will remember our message? And how many people will go to the supermarket and buy the product? Behavioural change. So what we wanted to do is say, okay, let's use that methodology, let's use that system to measure the impact of the day. So how many people can we expose to the 21st of September? How many people are going to remember it's the 21st of September? And how many people are going to be more peaceful on the day as a result? Now that's a well-tried out, tested methodology that McKinsey's utilised for corporations all over the world. We wanted to use it for peace, and it was fascinating, and it's been really interesting because the numbers have been growing very rapidly, which means that I'm not so worried about the exposure number or the awareness number. What I'm most interested in is the behavioural change number. How many people are more peaceful? I mean, that's just like incredible and unbelievably exciting. I mean, I've been on the road 19 years, 123 countries, and I'm only here now because I'm just totally believe, VJ, we can unite for peace. There is such an opportunity out there, and there are so many people who are really interested in wanting to be involved in the peace process, and that's our job, isn't it, as individuals and organisations, to sort of just take that message out there and provide that opportunity for people. The behavioural change, some of you might be sitting there, VJ, tell me when I've got 2 minutes, but I don't want to run over, but how do you measure that behavioural change part, you might be thinking, okay? Because let's say, well, how do you know if somebody's been less violent? How do you measure that? One of the really interesting ways and very accurate ways is in schools. So the education materials that we've been putting out are in 146 countries at the moment. thousands and thousands of schools. So because the teachers are given lesson plans through art and music and literature and whatever it might be, sport, etc., they take their young people on a journey over a year, over a term, over a week, over the day. And the young people, because they've been involved in that journey, right, they're thinking about peace and they're thinking about intercultural cooperation being the key to humanity's survival, and suddenly they're interacting completely differently in the school. So we then speak to the school afterwards, and the school with a questionnaire, and the school says, oh yeah, well, there was no bullying in our school that day. We've had no detention, we had no referrals, we had no vandalism. I mean, like, total behavioural change. I mean, incredible. And so, that's measurable. And then, of course, you work ever so hard to do that in all kinds of other sectors within the faith communities. We've seen the Pope talk about the day. We've seen the Dalai Lama talk about the day. You do that in the NGL world, the domestic and sexual abuse world. And that's how we're sort of, coming up the numbers. I think the last thing that I'll say is that we now, look, Peace Day is a celebration of all of our efforts over the course of a year. We don't want peace for one day. We want peace for 365 days. One day is just a celebration. It's like our birthday. Our birthdays are a celebration of our lives, but we live it every day. And what I'm interested in doing now, and we're going to utilize technology to do it, is to try and create a profile kind of system, platform system, to inspire an individual every day to carry out actions for a more peaceful and sustainable world with a focus on the SDG, but almost an invisible focus, because it's quite tricky. So I just want you to know that we are really thinking about something very special. We've created a new entity. We've been raising finance. It's been going extremely well. And in September, we will launch something in the world of technology to inspire and empower a new generation of peacemakers on a really interesting scale. So I'm just privileged to be here. And I totally believe that we can unite for peace. And I think this is wonderful, Vijay, that you've done this. Thank you very much.